Okay, man. Welcome to video 3. This is an interesting topic. Today I'm going to talk about the fact how porn is so different from sex. Porn and sex are two completely different entities, which is why a porn addict is not a sex addict. So what many men will find in the beginning is that when they stop watching porn and start finally having sex in their life, sex is not as pleasurable to them as porn. And that's scary. You're so conditioned right now, many of you watching, that you would rather watch another man get a blowjob, and it's more pleasurable than get a blowjob. And it's not your fault. There's many mechanisms at work here. The first is what I like to call the death grip mechanism. And it's the fact that the satisfaction that you get from watching porn does not correlate to the satisfaction of what's actually going on in the videos. So for example, when you're watching a guy finger a girl and it's arousing you, you might be masturbating with a death grip, white knuckles, and it feels really good to you. But meanwhile, the guy in the video is not having any pleasure on his penis. So it's a strange thing to talk about, but it's a realization that you need to have. So for example, take it a little further, even with the blowjob, there's a syndrome that I think doesn't exist, I've created, and it's called post-sex porn syndrome. I just made that up right now. And it's a syndrome that I had. And it's a syndrome where you start watching porn before you start having sex. And if you start watching porn at the age of 12 and you don't have sex at the age of 20, then you've been watching porn for 8 years and you think you know what sex feels like, you think you know what the pleasure feels like, and then you start having sex and it's completely different. And you are more attuned and you want porn over sex. This is the main cause, in my opinion, of erectile dysfunction in young guys who are completely healthy and they just cannot get boners with real women, and they just, what do? They just continue watching porn and have all these anxieties about sex in their life, sexual anxiety, nervousness, and all these problems. And it's a big problem. So back to the white knuckle syndrome. It's a ridiculous name, but I'm just shooting this on the spot. If you're watching a guy get a blowjob in a porn video, blowjobs feel great, but it's so different than you sitting at home masturbating, knowing exactly what you like, taking yourself to the edge of the limit, then back down, then the edge of the limit, and then back down. You're building your dopamine up so high, and it's so pleasurable to you. The orgasm is so intense. But with a real woman, a blowjob's not actually like that. It's so different, and it takes a long time. And if you're new to sex and you start meeting real women and you've been watching porn your whole life and you get a blowjob, it's likely that you won't even be able to ejaculate. And this is a problem for a lot of guys. So basically what I'm going to say here now is that yes, this will be true in the beginning. Sex might not seem as great to you as porn, but over time, as the porn pathways die, sex becomes better and better and more amazing. And I can promise you now that I get an erection just touching a woman's leg, or her touching my leg, or just seeing a beautiful woman. And you start to develop into a great man, and that's the whole point of this, you know, how to quit porn for good and live the life of your dreams. You want to be a great man. You want to be able to pleasure women better than any other man. You want to not just be a guy who just wants to nut and ejaculate, but it's a guy who can give women multiple orgasms and who can do tantric practices and cool stuff like this. And when you get to that level, you'll never want to watch porn again. In my mind, porn is the ego. Porn sex, jerking off and ejaculating, is you pleasing your ego. And it feels good. It feels good, I'm not gonna lie. Your ego it loves to be pleased. It feels so good. But real sex is not the ego. And when a lot of guys switch from porn to real sex, they're just chasing ejaculation, chasing ejaculation, chasing ejaculation. So a different way sex is different from porn is that sex is about the act itself. And you'll realize this over time naturally. This isn't a course on sex. If you want that, you can check out the Orgasm Academy, which we'll have a 50% off link to below, obviously. So real sex is about connection, being with a woman. In the mind of myself and many of my friends, you start having sex with a woman when you first lay eyes on her, when you're having a conversation with her. This kind of thought process is called Tantra. Tantra is not seeking ejaculation. Tantra is all about the moment-to-moment pleasure of connection and experience. And when you have this in your life, yes, you can ejaculate, but you can also not even ejaculate. You can have multiple orgasms. As a man, you can ejaculate inwards up into your spine and have energetic orgasms. You can last as long as you want, and you can have the most intense orgasms you ever could imagine. So basically what I'm saying here is that right now porn might feel better than sex because you're feeding your ego. But once you let your ego die, once you move away from porn sex and into connection and trueness and love, sex will be so much more powerful than porn. So it's very, very worth it. And like I said, this is not a course on getting better at sex, but we all want to be better at sex. So below you will find a link to my partner's program, the Orgasm Academy, which changed my sex life in a day. I was having a lot of nerves with a girl about keeping an erection because I had a strange scenario where I couldn't, and then she was coming over the next night, and this program allowed me to have one of the best nights of sex immediately after that and continuously from there. And honestly, I haven't even watched most of it. I just talked to the guy who made it, and it's an amazing, amazing program. By the time you're watching it, I've watched all of it, but it's it's awesome. So, not trying to upsell you, but if you want to know about that, the link is below, and you get half off for being a How to Quit Porn for Good member. So that's this video in all. Porn and sex are completely different, and know that if you're not loving sex right now and porn is much more pleasurable for you, that will fade over time, and it's different for everyone.